Hey football fans, thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Top 10 Project, as we will be reviewing my list of the top 10 most valuable running backs of the 1990s. Now buckle your chin strap as we make our way through this ground and pound list of running backs. The top 10 most valuable running backs of the 1990s. 1990, number 3, Neil Anderson. Number 2, Thurman Thomas. Number 1, Barry Sanders. 1991, number 3, Emmett Smith. Number 2, Thurman Thomas. Number 1, Barry Sanders. 1992, number 3 is Barry Foster. Number 2 is Thurman Thomas. Number 1 is Emmett Smith. 1993, number 3 is Ricky Watters. Number 2 is Jerome Bettis. Number 1 is Emmett Smith. 1994, number 3 is Barry Sanders. Number 2 is Marshall Faulk. And number 1 is Emmett Smith. 1995, number 3 is Barry Sanders, number 2 is Curtis Martin, and number 1 is Emmett Smith. 1996, number 3 is Ricky Watters, number 2 is Terrell Davis, and number 1 is Terry Allen. 1997, number 3 is Dorsey Levens, number 2 is Terrell Davis, and number 1 is Barry Sanders. 1998, number 3 is Fred Taylor, number 2 is Jamal Anderson, number 1 is Terrell Davis. 1999, number 3 is Eddie George, number 2 is Edgerrin James, and number 1 is Marshall Faulk. Okay, coming in at number 10 is Rodney Hampton. Hampton is the first of 2 players on our list not to make the top 3 most valuable running backs in any year of the decade. Hampton did, however, make the top 25 in 6 out of the 10 years. Hampton had an 8-year career all during the 90s. He made the Pro Bowl twice in 1992 and 1993. Hampton racked up 6,897 yards on the ground and another 1,309 receiving yards and scored a total of 51 touchdowns for the decade. He scored a 932.62 on the FGV scale. Number 9, Terrell Davis. Hall of Fame running back Terrell T.D. Davis was a rookie in 1995 and played 5 years throughout the 90s. He came in second place for the Rookie of the Year voting in 1995 and then made the Pro Bowl and All-Pro First Team squad 3 years in a row, from 1996 to 1998. He won the Offensive Player of the Year award in 1996 and again in 1998, when he also won the league MVP, and the same year that he led the league in rushing yards with 2,008. He rushed for 6,624 yards and scored 58 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He added another 1,207 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. He is currently the all-time leading rusher in Broncos history. He scored a 948.47 on the FGV scale. All right, number 8 on our list, Jerome Bettis, the Bus. Bettis enjoyed a 13-year career and burst onto the NFL scene in 1993 as a rookie and won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. He made the Pro Bowl 6 times in 1993, 94, 96, and 97, 2001, and 2004. He was selected to the All-Pro First Team twice in 93 and 1996. Bettis was a rookie in 1993 and played in 7 out of the 10 years during the decade. He rushed for 8,463 yards and scored 41 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He is currently 8th on the all-time rushing leaders list with 13,662 yards. He scored a 982.57 on the FGV scale. Number 7, Chris Warren. Warren is the second player on our list to not make the top 3 most valuable running backs in any year of the decade. He is, however, our first player on the list to play in all 10 seasons of the 1990s. Warren was a rookie in 1990, but didn't crack the starting lineup until 1992. He was selected to the Pro Bowl 3 times with the Seahawks in 1993, 94, and 95, and he rushed for 7,400 yards and scored 50 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He added another 1,632 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. He scored 986.81 on the FGV scale. Okay, number 6 on our list, Marshall Faulk. Faulk was a rookie in 1994 and won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award and was selected to the Pro Bowl. He would make the Pro Bowl 6 more times in his career, in 1995 and then again in 98 through 2002. He won the league MVP award in 2000 in the league's Offensive Player of the Year award 3 straight years from 1999 to 2001. He rushed for 6,701 yards and scored 49 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He added another 3,852 receiving yards and 14 receiving touchdowns. He is currently 12th on the all-time leading rusher list with 12,279 yards. He scored a 1,138.81 on the FGV scale. Number 5, Terry Allen. Allen was a rookie in 1991 and played in 8 out of 10 years during the decade as he missed the 93 season due to a knee injury. Allen was selected to the Pro Bowl in 1996. The same year, he led the league in rushing touchdowns with 21. He rushed for 7,777 yards and scored 68 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He added another 1,526 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. He scored a 1,142.64 on the FGV scale. Okay, coming in at number 4 on our list, Thurman Thomas. Hall of Famer Thomas is our second player on the list to play in all 10 years during the decade. He was a rookie in 1988 and played 13 years in the league. He led the league in yards from scrimmage 4 straight years, from 1989 all the way through 1992. He won the Offensive Player of the Year and League MVP awards in 1991 and made the Pro Bowl 5 years in a row, from 1989 through 1993. He was a first-team All-Pro selection in 1990 and 1991, and he rushed for 9,813 yards and scored 57 touchdowns for the decade. He added another 3,464 receiving yards and 16 more receiving touchdowns. He is currently the all-time leading rusher in Bills history. And he's also 16th on the all-time rushing leaders list with 12,074 yards, and he scored 1,400.80 on the FGV scale. All right, our top 3. Coming in at number 3, Ricky Running Waters. Waters was a rookie in 1992 and burst onto the NFL scene with a breakout 1,000-yard season. He played in 8 out of the 10 years for the decade. He went to 5 straight Pro Bowls from 1992 through 1996. He led the league in yards from scrimmage in 1996 with 1,855 and rushing attempts, 353. He rushed for 9,083 yards and scored the 3rd most rushing touchdowns for the decade with 70. He added another 3,528 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. He is currently 24th on the all-time leading rusher list with 10,643 yards. Waters scored 1,407.92 on the FGV scale. Okay, number 2 on our list, the electrifying Barry Sanders. A first ballot Hall of Famer inducted in 2004, Sanders was a rookie in 1989 and played in 9 out of 10 years during the decade as he retired after the 1998 season. He made the Pro Bowl all 10 years of his career. He also was selected as a first-team All-Pro 6 times, 5 times in the 90s. He led the league in rushing yards 4 times in his career, 1990, 94, 96, and 97, and he led the league in rushing touchdowns once in 1991. He won the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1989, Offensive Player of the Year in 1994 and 97, and the League MVP in 1997. He rushed for 13,799 yards and scored 85 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He added another 2,639 receiving yards and 10 receiving touchdowns. He is currently the all-time leading rusher in Lions history and 4th on the all-time career leaders for rushing yards with 15,269 yards, and he scored a 1,727.93 on the FGV scale. And the number 1 most valuable running back of the 1990s is Emmett Smith. Smith was a rookie in 1990 and played in all 10 years during the decade. He led the league in rushing attempts 3 times, 1991, 94, 95. Led the league in rushing yards 4 times, 91, 92, 93, and 95. Led the league in rushing touchdowns 3 times in 92, 94, 95. And yards from scrimmage twice, 93 and 95. He won the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1990 and the League MVP award in 1993. He made the Pro Bowl 8 times and was selected as a first-team All-Pro 4 times. He is currently the career rushing yards leader with 18,355. He rushed for 13,963 yards and scored 136 rushing touchdowns for the decade. He added another 2,728 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. He scored a 2,097.44 on the FGV scale. Okay, that's my list. That's the top 10 most valuable running backs of the 1990s. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back in a few weeks to walk through my most valuable running backs for the 2000s as we continue our march to figure out who the most valuable running back of all time will be. Don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell a friend. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.